Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more very interesting Q&A. Yeah, so I'm just going to launch straight in with the first topic of discussion today. And that is, it's been brought forwards by Grant McDonald, who says, what is best for controlling power? Is it the Mainsheet or the Traveller, or is steering the better thing to do? Okay, I think we've outlined a pretty good first question there. And this is pretty significant. So significant, in fact, that yes, I have drawn two triangles on the board here. So the first one, we're taking it right down to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals of what is most important whenever we go sailing is at the bottom of the triangle. This is the foundation of which everything else is kind of built on. So what is most important? It is the course. That is the direction in which we are going to sail the boat. Because if you're not sailing the boat in the right direction, then everything else is, you don't really know where you are for everything else. The direction, if you're sailing in the right direction but you're doing everything else perfectly, you're still not going to achieve the objective that you're looking for. So definitely the course is the most important, and this can be applied to pretty much every aspect of catamaran sailing. So always focus on where are you going, and where are you going, which way you're pointing the boat, and always have control of the steering. Okay, fundamental number one. So then what is the next most important? Well, I think we know because it's written here. The next is, what are we doing with the sails? So this could be for a number of reasons. First, main two reasons. First reason why we want to have the sails set correctly is to get the boat moving in an optimum kind of manner for the conditions, so that we're sailing reasonably quickly for the wind and the direction that we're sailing in. And then after the course and the sails, next most important is what we're going to call the trim. And the trim is what we're giving as a name to where we are sitting on the boat. So that could be forwards and backwards movements or side to side movements on the boat. So course, sails, trim. Now, just one thing to point out here, this is for catamaran sailing. If we were talking about monohull sailing, then trim and sails would be the other way round, because when you're sailing a monohull, if you are sat in the wrong place on the boat, there is a strong chance the boat is going to capsize without giving you much warning. So that is the difference with monohull sailing. So the question from Grant is, Mainsheet versus Traveller for controlling power. Yeah. And what about steering for smaller gusts? Yeah, this is all very good to know. So if we're sailing upwind, then three ways we control our power. The first one, let's just get the Traveller done. So the Traveller, we're using kind of like gears, which in terms of power control, the more we have the Traveller to the middle, the more power we're going to have generally. As we let the Traveller out more, we're going to have generally less power. So what we're going to be doing, as we can see on this triangle here, Mainsheet is the fundamental control of our power. So it is the main sheet which is going to save us. If it feels like we're going to capsize, adjusting the main sheet is going to have the largest effect when it comes to our sails. But having said that, the traveler is going to alter our angle of attack of the sails to the wind, which means if we are constantly having to let main sheet out to control the power, then we want to, rather than having to let the main sheet out all the time, we want to set the traveler out, kind of using it like gears, so that we can then still sail with the traveler tight. So just to illustrate this, if here's our boat, if we are able to sail most of the time with the traveler in the middle and the main sheet pulled in tight without feeling overpowered, then what we want to do is keep the traveler central for upwind sailing. However, if to keep the boat under control, we are constantly having to let main sheet out all of the time, then what we would want to be doing is easing the traveler out to a point where we're still able to get the main sheet in tight, and then we could just control the small differences in wind strength using the main sheet. But in the lulls, when the wind is dropping down, we're able to get the main sheet in so that the blocks are fairly close together again. And then if the wind is blowing even harder, then we can let the traveler out even further. And here we're talking like high 20s, maybe 30 knots of wind. We'll let the traveler out further. So again, we can bring the main sheet in pretty tight, but have much less power. So why aren't we just keeping the traveler in the center and easing loads of main sheet? Well, once we lose all of the tension in the main sheet, which could happen quite quickly if it's windy, that then means we've got no control over the shape of the sail. So if we've got our sail like this and a gust of wind comes along and we've got no tension in the main sheet, the sail is just going to alter its shape because of the pressure changing within the sail. So we want to be in control of the boat, in control of the sail. So the tighter we can have the main sheet in, the better. So if that means letting the traveler out, that is going to be the best thing we can do. Now, there's a school of thought, and I think this school of thought is largely correct in saying that isn't it better to keep the main sheet in position, tight, lock in that sail shape, and then if we get a gust of wind, we'll just ease the traveler out, keeping the sail shape the same, but altering our angle of attack so that we're as efficient as possible. In theory, yes, that would be the best way to sail the boat. But in practice, two reasons why I think why not. The first reason is the mechanics of it, that the traveler on the types of boat that we're using, if we controlled our power while this traveler is loaded up with pressure on the main sheet, and like we get a gust, let's dump the traveler, then there's a strong chance, especially on the less sophisticated boats, if you've got the plastic traveler slider, there is not a hope that that traveler will move. If it's loaded up with tension in the main sheet, that traveler is going to stay where it is. If you take it out of the cleat, it doesn't run smooth enough. Then if you've got a more sophisticated traveler, like maybe if you're running a Hobie 16 with the roller bearing traveler, if it's loaded up with pressure, there is still the same, well, not the same, but still a chance that that bad boy is not going to move. If you're sailing a boat with, the type of boat that we're talking about, with the nicest traveler, which you'd find on an F-18 style boat or similar, then yes, it is going to move. But how long is it going to be until you need to change the traveler balls? I would say not very long. So the mechanical reason why it doesn't work just to use the traveler in the gusts, that is the number one reason why I'm not favoring that method, even though there's a strong case for it is more efficient, keeping that shape locked in and then having that locked in shape move for the gusts. That would be very rapid. Okay, so second reason why I'm not using the traveler first technique for gust response is if you get a big gust of wind, you could let the traveler out all of the way with the main sheet locked in and the boat will still capsize. If you could keep the traveler in the middle and let out the main sheet, it has a much, much bigger and faster effect on the amount of power on the boat. So the main sheet is by far going to have the biggest effect. So when we look at our sails triangle, biggest effect, the main sheet, next biggest effect, the traveler, which will set like gears. And then the third biggest effect, but not to be overlooked, is the downhaul. So if we're sailing in stronger wind, like we've talked about many times before, we will pull the downhaul on as hard as possible, because that will flatten the sail. It will bring the center of effort, the deepest part of the sail, down and forwards, meaning that our boat is then much more efficient. There we go. So next part of the question, what about pinching? Pinching is a term meaning, like, if we're sailing along upwind like this, pinching is just turning up towards the wind, which will help to reduce the power. And if we're sailing to a point like a buoy, pinching will make our angle better going to the buoy. So is pinching a good method of adjusting our power or reducing the power in a gust? I would say yes, it is a very good method. So why are we not just heading up into the wind every time we get a gust? Good question. All right, so the definitive, in my opinion, answer to all of it is, if we're sailing upwind and we get a gust, maybe the hull starts lifting, we're already on the trapeze. If we're not already on the trapeze, perhaps we could get on the trapeze. Trim. But if we're already on the trapeze, or if we're not even thinking about getting on the trapeze, then first thing we can do is head the boat up into the wind. Just slightly. Whenever we do a course change on the boat, we always want to make it very small and very smooth. So having headed up into the wind, if we feel to keep the boat under control, to stop that hull from lifting right up, if we feel we need to head up into the wind so much that we start slowing down, then rather than doing that, we want to head up a bit, but not so much that the boat slows down. And at the same time, we want to let out a bit of main sheet. So it really is a combination of heading up, easing the main sheet. There we go. And what we're trying to achieve is keep the windward hull so it's just clear of the water, but at the same time, we don't want to head up so much that we slow down to control the gust. Okay. And I would say that is pretty much it. So it really is a combination, keeping our steering very smooth wherever possible. Okay, very good. So thanks very much to Grant for your question. I hope that was of some use to everybody. And I'd just like to say hello to those who are tuning in live. We've got Office Hands Dave on board. Dave says, we've got a new thing in the live chat. I don't know what it means, but there's a picture of a crown with a number 1. Don't know what it means. Are you aware that it's Saturday in America? Yes, I am. Yes, so I have had a schedule change for this week. I tried to make it as public as possible. I put it on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and I don't really use X at all. So I was hoping that would keep everybody informed enough. All right, we got Ryan on board in Maui, Hawaii. Morning, Ryan. I hope it's all good there. Although Ryan has suffered quite a, you know, some might see it as a catastrophic hull failure, but we could see it as an opportunity to find out what can be repaired. Yeah, I'm just going to draw a picture, if I may, Ryan, of what the bow of your boat is looking like. If this is the bow of Ryan's Nacra 500 bridle wire here, there is a dirty big crack about here, meaning the hull has lost all of its structural integrity. But I've spoken to the guys at Nacra, and they're fairly confident that a good boat builder should be able to repair it. But if anything like that happens when you're sailing, where there's a big crack appear in your hull, that's pretty bad. We want to stop the water from getting in there. So perhaps move our weight back slightly on the boat. In the same way, can we go 3D? Yeah, I think we can. In the same way, if your boat has the construction like that of a Dart 18 or a Hobie, in fact, where we've got a separate deck, and this can happen with older boats, if the deck starts to pop off the sidewalls of the boat and open up, that means this whole section of boat, of hull, has lost all of its strength, which means if we don't want to fold the hull in half completely, same with Ryan's situation, then what we have to be really careful of is sheeting in the main sheet too hard. If we sheet in hard, what is that going to do? There's our bridle fitting. It's going to pull up there as we sheet in, and what that's going to do is force the hull upwards, which could, if the hull has lost its structural integrity, then we could snap the hull in half. There we go. Ryan says, going to be out of the water for a little bit. Yeah, I would think first thing with any repair like this is we have to just really allow it to dry for as long as it takes. So if you're in somewhere, if you're somewhere really, really hot, then obviously it's going to dry out quicker. Or if you can put it into a greenhouse or something where it's going to heat up more, that will probably help. Okay, next we've got Wesley on board. Can any boat enter the speed stick, or is it just for cats? Yes, any sailing boat can enter the speed stick. So yes, any sailing boat can enter the speed stick, whether it's foiling, non-foiling, anything at all. But where we're drawing the line is no to windsurfing, kite surfing, or any of the board powered, not powered, but board sports. So it is just if what you drive is described as a boat in some description, powered by sails, then yes, you can get on the speed stick, and it is well worth doing. There we go. Thanks very much, Wesley. All right, he says, I'll have to get the foiling moth in there. Nice. Yeah. And the foiling boats, even though they're on the same speed stick list, are kind of like, you can, when you look at the speed stick, you can kind of judge the foiling boats slightly differently, because they are going to be quicker generally. There we go. All right, next one in there in the pre-loaded questions. This one comes from Frank, who sails a Hobie 18. Okay, I'm going to hope everybody has memorized these triangles. Very important. So the second one is, let's just, before we rub them out, this second one of what is the most important when it comes to setting our mainsail. The main sheet is having the biggest effect. So that we have established. And the downhaul, if we're just taking it down to these 3 points, is kind of having, in, like, let's call it global proportions, the least effect. But the downhaul will have a big effect on your boat speed and how the boat feels, if given that your traveller and main sheet are in the correct position. So don't overlook the downhaul. If it's a strong wind, really crank the downhaul on as hard as you can. It's going to make a big effect, but at the end of the day, the downhaul isn't going to stop you from capsizing. It is going to help to make the boat more efficient. It's going to help to make it smoother through the water, but the traveller and the main sheet going to have a bigger effect there. There you go. Okay, so Frank's question regarding the Hobie 18. He says, should I protect the luff end of the battens? So that is the front end of the battens. Should we draw it? Yes, I think we should. So here's our Hobie 18. I know it doesn't really look so much like a Hobie 18, but it is for now. There is the mast. So this is just to clear up a bit of the terminology. There is the sail. And let's have a jib as well for good measure. All right. So the luff end of the battens. So in sailing, the luff side of the sail, or the luff of the sail, is the front edge. Then if we just want some more terms right now, why not? Terms are important. The bottom is the foot and the back is the leech. There we go. Thank you for your time on that very delicate matter. Yeah, so the luff end of the battens. So in the sail, we're going to have our battens. Should they have rectangular plastic caps that slip on the very thin end of the batten? I noticed on the Hobie 16 batten, there was no plastic cap. Yeah, you don't need any plastic caps on the front end of the batten. And really, unless it is to satisfy class rules, you don't need any plastic caps on the batten at all. So when we're talking about plastic caps, if this is our batten, which would go in here, it's basically like at one end, the luff end, maybe a fairly small plastic cap just to make the end of the batten quite blunt, which would mean what we'd have on the sail here is a bigger plastic cap, which is kind of like that, and it fits on either side of the sail. So on one side be like that, other side like that, with a cavity in the middle, and then the end of the batten slots into that cavity. And then I suppose the idea with this plastic cap on here is to mean that there's less chance that the end of the batten is going to damage the pocket. But as long as we've got these plastic caps on here, then there shouldn't be too much risk of damage. What you should do, though, is when you take your batten, when you have a look at your batten, if you think that the end of the batten looks really sharp, then you could just take some sandpaper and sand it down a little bit so it's less sharp. It has no need to be really sharp at the front end. And then it just needs to go all the way into the cap there. So on a lot of the boats, you will have some sort of cap on the back edge of the batten, which on the Hobies, this would look something like this. And the idea with that is so that it makes it quicker and easier to adjust the tension in the batten. But is it necessary? If you don't have them, should you go out and spend your money on these caps? I say no. You can do exactly the same thing, tying the batten in. If this is our batten again, just by having a hole which you can drill through the batten, just using a drill with like a 5 or 6 mil drill bit, and then you can tie the battens in just using a simple hole. So there we go. All right, yeah, so there it is. That is what I believe on that point of battens and what is necessary. There are, of course, more sophisticated methods of tensioning your battens. Like them, you might have a batten cap which you actually tighten, like on windsurfers especially. Most batten caps have like an Allen key adjuster on the end, so you can get loads of tension and adjust them quite accurately. But it's not necessary on the boats that we're using, where the battens are generally longer, softer, and you can tension them adequately using the piece of rope, the batten tie supplied there. All right, so there we go. Okay, next question in the preloaded is from Chris. Chris is a UK-based Hobie 16 sailor. He said, when the Hobie 16 takes an unscheduled swim, what is the best way to get it to turn into the wind? Some people swear by standing on the bows. Others say keep the weight towards the rear. Okay, so let's just have a look and see what is the correct thing to do. So if we, how can we illustrate this best? What we need is a boat on its side, kind of like that. Yeah, tricky to do. So I'll just see if I can draw it. Oh, actually, rather than drawing it, if here is our boat on its side. Okay, this is just going to take a second. And just to put us into a bit of perspective. Somehow there's the other hull in the water. So we're looking straight down. So that would mean that the mast is here. There's the sail. Is everybody with me? Yes. Okay. So let's just look at different wind directions and where we need to stand to get the boat to point into the wind. So the way that we want the boat to point is with the wind directly blowing straight on to the bow of our capsized boat. What that is going to do is we're going to get a fair bit of wind under the mainsail or under both of the sails, which is going to help to unstick the sails from the water, which is going to make it much easier to pull the boat up. And in fact, you'll actually get a bit of wind assistance when the wind's blowing on the underside of the sail. Then it's going to help the boat to come back upright. So that is where we want the boat to stand up, to end up. So how do we get the boat to point that way if it's not pointing that way? So a lot of the time, and we're moving the wind, I know we don't do this often, but when we've capsized, the wind might be blowing from the mast downwards. Now, this can also be a possibility for the angle that we have the boat when we pull it upright, because we're still going to be getting some wind under the sail. But the issue that we're dealing with here is and we're also getting a bit of wind on the top of the trampoline, but when the boat comes upright, we're going to have quite a lot of wind on the sails blowing sideways, which could blow the boat over the other way. So if it's particularly windy, you don't want to have the wind in this direction. But if the wind is a bit lighter, like up to about 16 knots, anything from here to here with the wind direction is fine. Straight on is best, but for getting it done quickly, you might not always get it straight onto the wind, especially if the wind's a little bit lighter. Actually, getting the boat to change direction can be a little bit of it can be a bit more tricky. So when would we actually want to turn the boat into the wind? So if it was blowing this way onto the boat and it was really windy, we don't want to right the boat like this because of the chance of it flipping over the other way. So what we would do, if this is our sailor, our weight, we're going to put the weight at the front of the boat on the bow. And what we might even want to do is to be kind of sitting or even hanging off the bow of the boat, dragging our legs in the water, because what that is doing is that's meaning that this part of the boat is then acting like an anchor or a pivot point, which means then the wind's going to keep blowing on the trampoline and it's going to blow it round into the wind. So that is if the wind is blowing in this direction. Now, if it was blowing in this direction and we go to the back of the boat and we sink the back of the boat, make it pivot there, what is likely to happen is the boat's actually going to get blown the wrong way. So in that scenario where the wind's blowing directly down the mast onto the top of the trampoline, no, not to the back. All right, so let's have a look at the next wind direction. If the wind is coming onto the underside of the trampoline, then we can do the same thing again. If, you know, the danger here in how long it's going to take to bring the boat back upright is if we've got the wind blowing on the bottom of the trampoline, firstly, we're no chance are we going to be able to bring the boat back upright, because all of the wind, that pressure, is pushing on the bottom of the trampoline, trying to make the boat go upside down, which is kind of fighting against what we're trying to achieve. So by going to the bow of the boat, again, we're sinking the bow, and that's our pivot. So if we push there with the pivot there, yes, she's going to come up towards the wind. So what if, and I'm kind of thinking out loud here a little bit, there aren't so many opportunities or scenarios when getting to the back of the boat is the right spot to go, in my experience. So if the wind is now from here, and let's, for argument's sake, say the boat isn't inverting, what would happen if we put our weight at the back? Then maybe the boat would come round this way. But yeah, so, and it is pretty rare that when you're capsized, the wind's coming from behind you, because almost all capsizes are going to lead to the boat being one side or the other of the wind rather than the wind behind. If the wind is straight behind you, then if it's a smaller boat, like anything 16 foot or smaller, there's actually a good trick here that we can use, which is to get all the way to the back of the boat, but not to get the boat to pivot. But if we use our larger scale, so boat is like this on its side. If we get to the back of the boat, what happens there is the back of the boat will sink, and we can actually flip the boat round like that. So from back to the wind, all the way round to front to the wind. It's kind of easier than it sounds, although it is a little bit like the circuses in town, and you do have to hold on pretty tight to the righting line. But that would be one time when going to the back. But to be honest, I would say going to the back, in my opinion, has limited amount of use when actually getting the boat to pivot into the wind. Because at the end of the day, if we want it into the wind, we want that pivot, the anchor point, to be at the front, I think. Okay, so there we go. Thank you very much. All right, before we continue, just going to check in with everybody else who's just checking in the live chat. So Hans is on board. Guten Tag, Hans. Good to have you with us. So Hans says, lots of wind here. Greetings from Germany. Yeah, it's pretty. I tell you what, the summer seems like it is really having a good go at starting here in Greece now. Yes, it's been warm enough, but now it's switching over from warm to hot. Ooh. And with that should come an abundance of the good stuff. So if you're thinking of coming to Greece in the next couple of weeks, then very well done. It's going to be nice. All right. And someone who could probably testify to that, Cebu is on board. Thomas is with us, who is actually in Vasiliki right now, maybe on the Wild Wind Bar patio. So nice to have you with us, Thomas, as always. All right, Sunset Wingman is on board, who said, I never tried to turn the boat when righting it. I just start pulling it over and it always pivots into the wind on its way up. Yeah, you can certainly do that with the smaller boats. Definitely, like if you're sailing a Hobie 14 or something and it's not too windy. If what happens is as you bring the boat upright, the wind catches and turns it into the wind as you're coming up. But with the bigger boats or the heavier boats, it is, or if you don't have such a heavy team, then having some wind to help you bring the boat up is certainly somewhere on the scale of it being essential. Okay, so next in the preloaded, we've got Steve in Canada, sailing out of Okanagan Lake. Thank you. Very good at pronunciation. And this is a bit of a kind of cautionary tale, but Steve was sailing out of Okanagan Lake in Canada, sunny day with strong wind and waves, sailing a Hobie 14 turbo, 2 up, which already 2 up on a Hobie 14, unless you're very lightweight, is an unforgiving boat, especially if it was windy, because upwind, you are quite likely to capsize backwards because there's not enough volume in the hulls just to cope with having 2 people on the boat. Steve says they capsized on during a jibe and then struggled to right the boat despite having the correct safety equipment. They quickly responded with the crew assist with sorry. Oh, I see. It's not their boat. It's another boat. Sorry. Another boat capsized. So then Steve's crew jumped in the water to assist the capsized sailors of the 14. Hope everyone's following this better than I am. The boat was very unstable and difficult to right. And after about 45 minutes, the sailors gave up. And so, yeah, the thing with the smaller boats like the Hobie 16, the Hobie 14, or like if you're sailing a Dart 15 2 up, or any boat with low volume hulls, like a lot of the Aussie 14 footers, low volume hulls. If you've got more than one person, and we actually found this with, I was sailing with Hussein and Tarek here in Vasiliki Bay on the Hobie 16, and we did capsize. We found this exact thing is when you've got 3 people on a boat, we were on a 16, and you're capsized and you've got moving forwards and backwards, maybe moving backwards to uncleat the main sheet, then moving back forwards. That much weight, like 200 kilos or more, on a capsized boat like that, the boat is so unstable that it will just kind of, if we imagine here we are like this, the boat will just roll over in the water, again, with one of these circuses in town sort of moments. So, yeah, it's just one of those things with the smaller boats. So it was deemed that the 14 had a hull full of water, or half full of water. The 14 was then towed back to the shore on its side, with water inside causing the righting to be difficult. Everybody was fine, but the story emphasizes the importance of pre-season checks, respecting weather conditions, and planning for extended times in the water. Yeah, even if it is a sunny day, if it's windy, you should always dress, I would say, 2 stages warmer than you would think. Like we see it here a lot in Greece, where it can be like 30 degrees or more, and people are going out sailing in 25 knots of wind just in their swimming trunks. And we say no. Always dress a bit warmer, because even on the hottest day, if you're in the water for more than, like, I don't know what the statistics are, but I'd say more than a couple of minutes, you're going to start getting pretty cold. So let's say 30 degrees in the shade, you're going out sailing, 25 knots of wind, don't just go in your swimming trunks. Maybe put on a shorty wetsuit, or at least a spray top or something that is going to keep you a bit warmer. I think it's a very good idea. And the air temperature might be really warm. Like I know down in Cape Town, South Africa, it might be, again, 30 degrees air temperature, but the water temperature might be extremely cold. So do consider that when choosing what to wear. Yeah, okay. So on to Steve's questions. Is the Hobie 14 generally prone to rolling when it's on its side in the water? Yeah, rolling like we talked about, where it would go, if you're standing here, where 2 people standing there, then it will go down, and then it will kind of flop back on the other side. And if you're not careful and you go to the back, then it's going to just do that again. Yes, 2 people on the boat, that is something that could happen quite easily. And if you've got a hull full of water, what happens is, if the boat goes one way or the other, what's going to happen to the water? it's all going to rush to that end of the hull. Really, I think the word is exacerbating, answers on a postcard, that effect, and making it roll over more. So having the hull with water in it is going to make it even more difficult to get the boat as you'd want it in the water. Now, if unlikely, but if the water is in the hull that is up, then you are really in for a hard time, because if you imagine the mast, I did have a model. Sorry, Dave, I kind of broke it. If you have the mast coming down like this, and this hull's got water in it, that hull is going to try to make the boat invert. So to get the boat back upright with water in it, even more difficult, which really does make it so essential to do what you can to keep your boat sealed. If you go out sailing and you find there's like a couple of litres or pints of water in the hull, then do check the hulls to see where that water might be getting inside. Because if you're sailing without any safety cover or without any assistance available, it could mean that you just can't bring the boat back upright, even with a righting bag, even with over 200 kilos of weight. What makes it even worse is if your mast leaks, then that can make it absolutely impossible to right the boat. Because again, if you think about it, when the boat is on its side, there's the hull's mast. If the mast's got water in it, where's the water going to go? All in here, which is like putting quite a few kilos of weight at the end of the mast, where there's obviously a lot of leverage, which means it's just going to be impossible for you to bring the boat back upright. So making sure that everything's sealed is important. Now, we did have a boat. Here's an inside story at the beach here. The Hobie 14 that we've got here had such a problem with the mast leaking because it spent such a lot of time upside down. Some sort of corrosion went on that because we knew we couldn't stop water getting into the mast, we put a masthead float on the boat to make sure that the mast would never go under the water. And it's kind of like problem solved. There we go. Another idea. Next question from Steve is, was there anything else we could have done to get the boat back up once one hull is half full of water and sloshing around? Yeah, I think if it's the hull which is down, which is kind of more likely that it would be, because that's the one that's in the water, then it's just a case of getting the boat stable and trying to get the boat round into the wind, like we talked about in Chris's question. But that is pretty much all that you can do to get the capsized boat back upright. There we go, Steve. I hope you're able to get back out on the water and you are prepared for everything. Thanks for the question. All right, Benjamin's on board. Greetings from Germany. And yeah, I think at that stage, I hope you've enjoyed this Q&A on a Saturday for a change. And we should be back next Friday with the next Q&A as usual. But thanks for tuning in. And I will see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Get on the speed stick.